There's no arguing that today the Chola period is best remembered for its overseas expansions. In 1025 to 1026, the Chola Emperor Rajendra I dispatched an expedition to Kedah, a rich Malay port, and claimed the conquest of a number of other cities in Sumatra and the Malay Peninsula. Given India's historic position as the pivot of Indian Ocean trade, why did no other kings replicate this feat? The answer lies in Rajendra Chola's partners, the great Tamil merchant corporation known as the Ainuravar or the 500. The Chola Empire in the 1020s was arguably India's most powerful polity. Over the previous decades, the Emperor Rajaraja I had extended its power into southern Karnataka, coastal Andhra Pradesh, and northern Sri Lanka. But in the long term, it was a very real possibility that the manpower of the river valleys might overcome Chola armies. And so his heir Rajendra Chola explored new ways of cementing the empire. In the late 1010s, inscriptions show that he encouraged Tamil peasant warriors to settle down in South Karnataka, particularly in the Kolar region. Soon after, using regalia seized from defeated foes, he crowned his sons as sub-kings bearing titles like Chola, Lord of Lanka or Chola Pandya. But the most definitive, out-of-the-box way to establish Rajendra's authority would be to execute a conquest of the directions, a Digvijaya as it's known in Indian texts, and as we talked about in this video here. Now, a Digvijaya would establish him as a legitimate king of kings with vassals in all the directions. Early in his career, Rajendra had already led expeditions south and west. In 1022, he ordered an expedition north to the Ganga River to seize the sacred waters and consecrate a colossal imperial temple. But no coastal Indian king had ever been able to imagine a conquest east across the seas. Of course, we can't be sure to what extent symbolism actually influenced Rajendra's decision to attack Kedah, a prosperous Malay port just 2 weeks sailing east during the monsoon. Kedah was a long-standing but difficult trading partner for the Tamil coast. Known in Tamil as Kadaram, Kedah was an important Indian Ocean emporium. By the time of the Cholas, it had already been known to Tamil merchants for a millennia. Malaysian archaeologist Nasha bin Rodziadi Khaw, who excavated parts of Kedah, informed me that it was one of the most cosmopolitan centers in the Indian Ocean, a predecessor to the later, more famous port of Malacca. In the early 11th century, though, Kedah's ambitions were growing. It had erected a splendid Buddhist monastery in Nagapattinam, the most important Chola port. It also made modest gifts at a Shiva temple there. Meanwhile, in China, scholars such as Tantien Sen have suggested that Kedah ambassadors sought better tariff rates by claiming that the Cholas were their vassals. And most importantly, perhaps, Kedah had a dominant position in the global trade of exotic wood, camphor, and spices, all of which it sourced from deep in the Indonesian archipelago. These were sought by courts and temples across the Indian Ocean, and Tamil merchants wanted a cut. Large assemblies of these merchants, particularly of the Ainuravar merchant corporations, were present at Nagapattinam. Some had served as Chola ambassadors to China, and others lived in Gangaikonda Cholapuram, the Chola capital. As such, they had front row seats to Kedah's commercial ambitions as well as Rajendra Chola's political necessities. By providing their logistical expertise to Chola forces, Tamil merchants could not only eliminate Kedah but muscle into the most valuable trade networks in the Indian Ocean. And so in 1025 to 26, they did just that. Rajendra Chola adopted the title of Kedah Caesar Kadaram Konda and publicly exhibited a city gate which his troops had torn down and transported back. But there's no archaeological evidence that he sought to rule Kedah as an outpost, which makes sense given that his main challengers were in mainland India. Now, what the archaeology instead shows us is that by 1080, Tamil merchants had set up an independent port on the island of Sumatra in present-day Lobotua on the west coast. Soon after, they built a fort, Kotachina, on the east coast. From here, they could venture into the highlands in search of camphor, gold, and wood. To this day, the upland Karo peoples of Sumatra have Tamil loanwords in their vocabulary and tell stories of magic bearing Tamil priests and traders, suggesting a centuries-long interaction with Tamil settlers from the coast. Once the Cholas established a precedent, the rest of the Indian Ocean soon followed. The kings of Lanka raided Myanmar in the 12th century, and in the 13th century, as we talked about in this video here, a Malay king tried to conquer Lanka. But the question then becomes, why did no other Indian king send a maritime expedition to Southeast Asia? Simply put, it seems that Rajendra Chola's unique constellation of factors never came together in India again. He was a man of boundless imagination, willing to try new things, to use unconventional solutions, though sometimes with violent results. Overseas expeditions were risky and costly. It was generally not worth it for land-based states to invest in them, especially if they could rely on rice harvests like the Cholas could. Rajendra tried the Kedah expedition because it was profitable in other ways, but surely it's significant that in the latter part of his career, no inscription suggests that he sent another expedition there. Next, there are the Tamil merchants themselves who had a deep drive to expand and seize markets and were able to operate both under and beyond the rules of states. These merchants had a formidable understanding of navigation and military logistics. Many came from the same landowning and martial groups who composed the Chola aristocracy. These merchants, in fact, outlived the Cholas, surviving well into the 16th century, but by that time the Tamil coast was ruled by the upland Vijayanagara Empire, which was more interested in Deccan wars and wouldn't risk a Southeast Asia gamble. But most importantly, by the 16th century, Tamil merchants were already extremely successful, and Tamil textiles dominated Indonesian markets, so there was little to gain from a naval expedition. This trade dominance had begun with the Chola raid, but was really maintained by a thriving Tamil diaspora that extended as far as China. A reminder that sometimes cultural diasporas can achieve as much, if not more, than an armed force. Overseas expeditions do capture the imagination in a time when Indians are searching for a past which fulfills our yearning to be a contemporary superpower. But I would suggest that the uniqueness of Rajendra Chola's Kedah expedition, given the unlikely set of factors that made it happen, makes it all the more astonishing. It was easily the most astonishing display of logistics and military power of the entire medieval period. If you have questions or comments, we'd love to hear them. Follow us everywhere on social media. You can find me on Instagram at Buddha and on Twitter at Ekaneseti. See you next week.